And yeah, welcome everybody. So I've talked a little bit about, everything from this governance model using archetypes, and then some about the restorative environment and using that social window. I've kind of showed some people the power that has. And I'm really excited to have Kathleen with me today. She's a co-author of the little book on restorative teaching tools. She works with organizations, universities, and city departments across the United States in order to actually be able to actually get excited about conflict, understand that conflict isn't something we have to like tense up and avoid. There's actually a lot of innovation within conflict if we can see it as an opportunity, and if we have this shared language on and processes on which to work through it. And in order to have that, I think it's really important to be able to not just have the place to go when the conflict happens, but like all the preventative things you can build up in the environment to help make sure everybody has a voice and everybody feels psychologically safe to be heard and seen. So that's my intro, Kathleen. Hopefully that was decent enough, but feel free to add anything else in there, and I'll let you take it away and then just let me know. It's pretty informal, so just do the like little icon hand raise, and I'll help monitor that for you, Kathleen, while you're talking. So.
Great, thank you. Hi, everybody. It's so nice to join you. This is my first time joining the town hall environment, so I really appreciate the invitation, Nick, and the opportunity to connect internationally with this really exciting work that you all are doing. So just a little bit more about my background. I grew up in the United States, but chose to study abroad in Latin America during my undergrad. In Chile and in Oaxaca, Mexico. And so that kind of opened up my whole understanding of humans and the world, and also introduced me firsthand to global social injustice. So through my experiences, I ended up working on the US-Mexico border in Tijuana and the Baja California Peninsula. And I was leading a cross-cultural immersion program. So students from the United States and Canada would go down to the border region to learn about what was happening there with immigration and border factories and the socioeconomic conditions that stimulate immigration. And the real purpose for me was just bringing people together to hear from each other versus having all of these biases and stereotypes and stigma that we might get just from the media. So after doing that for a little while, I realized what I was really interested in was peace and conflict and the dynamic interplay of those, and what to do to facilitate through perceived differences. I moved to Western Europe for my master's degree. For those of you who are European or are familiar with European culture, it is way more affordable to get a degree in Europe than it is in the United States. And I also just wanted any excuse to leave the country again. So I started a program in Castellón, Spain, and then I transferred to the University of Innsbruck in Austria to complete an international master's in peace and conflict studies. So in that setting, I learned about this model called conflict transformation, which I'll be talking about with you today. And that really caught my interest, and that led me to my work in restorative justice back here in Colorado in the US, where I am now in Longmont, which is a city just north of Denver. And so for the last 8 years, I led a nonprofit or non-government organization that provides restorative justice as an alternative to the criminal justice system, working with youth and adults who have been, they're about to be charged with a crime. But in this city, the police can actually choose to refer the offender and victim to restorative justice instead of writing a ticket or arresting them, and that those offenders and victims will go through this restorative justice process as an alternative, and will stay completely out of the criminal system. So we worked with about 300 youth and adults every year with a 95% success rate. And those who go through that process, only 3.5% will recidivate or reoffend, which compared to the way the criminal justice system works in the United States, I'm sure it's no secret that our reoffense rates are like at 60 to 70%. Our incarceration system is like a revolving door. People go in and go out. So it's a really effective mechanism, and it's also really unique because police can actually refer cases to an alternative instead of using the court system. So after doing that for 8 years, what really excited me was the possibility of taking all of those same principles from restorative justice and applying them in any other environment where there are humans who are likely to cause harm to each other, even if a crime is not involved, simply through disagreement, conflict, or just making a mistake. So I led the nonprofit in this way that built a restorative culture internally, using the same frameworks and concepts that we were using to partner with the justice system. So what kind of brings me here today is this idea of how those restorative approaches challenge conventional approaches to how we work through harm and disagreement, and how that actually generates opportunities for innovation. So when we're in right relationship with each other, we improve our ways of sharing ideas, of connecting, and then we diversify what's possible between us. So I would like to just pause, since I will be doing a fair amount of talking. Could I hear from you all, just like your name and where you are at this moment? We just, since there's only a few of us, I'd just love if you could unmute and tell me where you are and your name.
I can go first. I'm already mute. Nice to meet you, Kathleen. I'm Jacob. I live in Edinburgh, Scotland. I originally come from Poland, but decided to move over to the UK. I spent like 15 years working in project management, digital project management in London, and over the last year and a half, I've been here in Edinburgh, and I really love it here. It's really nice.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I'm quite new to the Project Catalyst myself as well. Actually. I pretty much started reading about it yesterday, and today got like, pulled into one meeting and then another. And it's like, whoa, this thing is on fire. And the reason that brought me into that is that I started thinking out loud about the project that Charles was talking about in one of his AMAs a few days ago. And the project he actually mentioned was quite big and bold. It's related to, maybe you heard about that. It's related to the idea of de-extinction of the woolly mammoth, as in bringing back the woolly mammoths to exist. Which is crazy, right? But there's been some scientific research done about based on the fossils, and there's two facts that actually have been proven. First is that we contributed, mankind contributed to earlier extinction of the woolly mammoth. We kind of learned to organize and to kill the big animals, so we felt strong, and we killed literally all of them. So we kind of accelerated the extinction. That's one thing. So I think we kind of owe them a little bit, if we are talking about bringing them back. And secondly, it's been also researched and proven that thanks to the grazing and roaming patterns of woolly mammoths. They're massive animals, but they traverse thousands of miles in their, like tens of thousands of miles in their lifetime, which contributes to making the Earth's ecosystem more resilient to, like, it's, you know, it's the easiest comparison would be probably the case of restoring the wolf in the Yellowstone Park. What that did to the local ecology and to the local, you know, ecosystems. Basically, you know, with the woolly mammoth traversing across Canada, Alaska, and Siberia, it knocks off certain pieces of like old trees and stuff like that, which apparently contributes to reducing number of fires in very remote areas, and there's other factors as well. So long story short, we thought like, okay, this is happening. There is this company called Colossal, and they are actually working with professors from the Harvard University to sequence the DNA of the mammoth, which they found in pretty good shape, and to make a hybrid between the mammoth and the Asian elephant that would be resistant to -40 Celsius, you know, temperatures, and they want to make it happen. So I was like, this is crazy. I love it. And at the same time, I thought, okay, you know, but this is somewhat controversial as well. Some people might say, okay, we're actually, you know, playing God a little bit, like the idea of de-extinction. You know, there is some ethics behind that as well that we need to be aware of. So I thought, okay, it's a great case for a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization that would focus, you know, experts in genetics, experts in veterinary, you know, how to look after the animal, you know, and how to make it feel at ease, you know. And I thought that it would be great to have this kind of a global network of people, experts in, you know, fields like genetics, you know, academia, animal behavior, like behaviorists, some ethical authorities as well, that would hold the sort of majority of votes and make decisions of what should be done in this case. But also, since this huge animal would be, you know, traveling on its own and possibly, you know, accessing remote locations where some indigenous people might still live and, you know, mind their own business, I think that they should have a vote as well. So a DAO built in this way sounds like something that probably is a good idea. And we proposed it earlier today to Nori and some other guys in the call, and they really liked it, and we got some good feedback. So, you know, we send our proposal for Fund 7, and we'll see what comes out of it. That's me. Sorry for taking so long.
No worries. We might need some extra large restorative justice processes based on what happens with the return of the woolly mammoths.
There you go.
So I'd love to hear from the other two folks I haven't met yet.
Maybe me, I might be one of them. Hello, I'm Bruno. I'm from Portugal. A bit like Jacob, I was in London for a long time. So yeah, I recently I was born here and I recently come back from London. So I've been here 2 years now. And yeah, I'm working on a project with the team over at Empower. And yeah, involved with Cardano Catalyst. I haven't ever voted, but I'm always in the town halls and I'm always like in the breakout rooms. But yeah, I really like the community here and love all the projects. And I really like to hear, I'm loving to hear your project and the things that you've worked on and bringing it to Cardano. I think that's really good. And something I've pondered about, I've always thought about it, but I've never, like, it feels like such a massive issue, you know. It's like very hard to combat, you know, the justice system is, you know, very corrupt and very lots of holes. But yeah, that's it for me.
Thank you.
I'm from Germany, Berlin actually, but I moved out of the city earlier this year, and I now live in Potsdam, which is a bit close, very close to Berlin, just outside the city. And yeah, I heard about this woolly mammoth first time today. I'm super shocked. I don't know. I hope it's a hoax, preparing for the next year's 1st of April or something. But yeah, I mean, wolf is one thing, but a woolly mammoth that has been extinct for many more years, and the ecosystem
4,000 years. Yeah.
Yeah, sketchy. I don't know, but interesting nonetheless. Yeah, yeah, I'm happy to be here, and I applaud what you're doing, or what you have done, and what you're now trying to do with the ecological balance. Yeah, let's do this.
Well, thanks. And Nic, do you want to?
Yeah, I'll go. Yeah. So I'm Nic. I'm from the States in Colorado. That's where I met Kathleen. But I'm currently in Guatemala right now, down at Lake Adelan. And it's a nice little community down here. I definitely love the nature and yeah, the vibes, the people down here, lots of art and consciousness kind of stuff. So and yeah, I'm really excited we've talked, some about this restorative environments, but I'm excited to really put the focus on how it drives innovation, because that's really what we're looking for in Catalyst. Is not just, how can we fund an idea, but how do we get the best ideas to get funded and get all of those perspectives out there, and create an environment where people feel psychologically safe, so that all these ideas can be expressed early on, and it doesn't take a big disruptive conflict to get it all out. And I think it's key with our clients too, of our projects, right? The people that are going to be using the software or the tools or the events that we put on. Even just hearing that customer feedback is, when we hear it in a way where it can be an opportunity for growth, it turns into a lot, better innovation along the way. So thank you.
Thanks, Nic. Okay, so I want to start with a little bit of an interactive activity. All of this work that's restorative is really kind of meaningless unless you internalize it. So I'm going to ask you, does everyone have access to the chat? Will you be able to type into the chat box? That's how I'm going to ask you to respond to a few questions. Okay, so warm up questions. Who has the most siblings? So write into the chat box how many brothers or sisters you have. 0, 2, 1. I've got 2.
Half brothers and sisters also count?
Sure.
Oh yeah, I guess I can go up 1.
Okay.
Oh, nice. I like it. Winner.
Down with 6 is the winner. This is a great question, since y'all are all over the world. What is the most interesting form of transportation that you used? Most interesting form of transportation? Balloon, nice. Your backpack, a wheelbarrow, and a surfboard. Great creativity.
Doesn't work everywhere, but from one point of the beach to the other point of the beach. Cool.
For sure. I'll do a bike cart, actually I took one of those in Nicaragua and I was close to you.
What's a bike cart? What's that?
Oh, what is it? Someone's riding a bike and there's a cart behind them pulling, and you can sit there. Okay. It's a lovely way to travel.
Rickshaw with a bike, I think, right?
Yeah, like a rickshaw. You just have to be careful about where you put your backpack, because I had 2 straps of my backpack get caught and rip off in the cart, unfortunately. Okay, third warm-up question. If you could have one thing floating around your head at any time that you could reach out and grab it, what would it be? One thing floating around your head. Maybe a woolly mammoth.
Probably too big.
Anything's possible. A lighter, very practical. A cannabis tree. You might want to come to Colorado.
A bit
Very
better for
flexible.
mine.
I heard you.
A truth detector. I'm going to say the smell of the ocean.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Everything better for me. Okay, moving into how this is relevant to restorative practices. Oh, a Haskell developer. That's
It's one of the,
And
yeah, in-demand developer languages right now to build on top of Cardano. So,
okay,
yeah.
cool. Yeah, that's like a whole, that's definitely another language for me. Okay, so this is moving towards like thinking about restorative approaches in a workplace. Reflect on a time that when you were an employee of an agency, or you were even just like a member of a group, and you learned that something had happened in the group that was hurtful or offensive to somebody else. So it didn't happen to you, but you just knew that it affected others in the group. What did you need as a result of that? So in the group, you heard something happen, there was offense or hurt. What did you need at the time?
Can you repeat it? Sorry.
No problem. So think of a time when you were either, an employee at any workplace, or you were a member of a group, and you learned that someone in the group was hurt or offended. It didn't happen to you, but you just knew that it happened and it affected others. What did you need?
What did I need?
Mm-hmm.
Well, needed to know that this person is going to be fine. Going to need that, basically whatever harm to this person happened, it could have been me. So a sort of peace of mind that someone would assist and help this person overcome whatever happened to them.
Yeah, great. So I'm seeing in the chat, similarly, peace, getting to know that someone was going to help the person who was hurt. Freedom to share my own truth without getting fired. I need to find out why the other person said or did that. Great. Okay, now kind of taking that same scenario, but now you were the person who was hurt. So you're part of a group, maybe at the workplace, and someone said something that was hurtful or offensive to you. In that situation, what did you need? And you can write your answer in the chat.
Well, I would say a system of support that reacts to inappropriate behavior.
System of support. Nick said time or space to shake it off before responding. Dan said to know why that person said or did it. Yeah, so these questions about why, getting information. And agreeing with Nick. Anything you want to add, Bruno?
No, not right now.
Okay, no worries. Okay, and then third, in the next step, you might know where this is going. Imagining a time when you were in a group and you said or did something that caused harm to somebody else. So you said or did something that was offensive or hurtful. After the fact, what did you need? Thanks, Jacob. To explain yourself, to hear from someone that I was hurtful. Yeah, so like just to learn about it, to know what happens. And Nic said to be able to be vulnerable and apologize. Yeah, great. So yeah, thinking through these different scenarios, and imagining, right? Like whenever we are in a group, whether we're working together or it's our family or a community group, this kind of thing happens, right? We become aware of hurt or harm in a relationship, or we cause harm, or we are hurt. And there's a lot of shared needs across any of those experiences. So the need for more information, the need for a system to be able to either say what happened or to take responsibility, to be able to approach the person that either hurt you or that you hurt, to be able to actually communicate with them. So recognizing that builds kind of this bridge towards how restorative practices help meet those needs. So thank you for participating in that. I am going to just share with you a little bit of background first in the framework of restorative justice, to give you a little bit more understanding of that, and then move into the restorative environments for innovation. Is everybody able to stay a little bit longer? Like, I want to make sure I'm careful with the time.
Yeah, all good.
Okay.
All
Okay.
good.
Great. I could just talk to Nic for forever, but he's already heard a lot of this. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, cool. So one of the ways to just get like an overview, the difference between a restorative process versus a retributive or punitive process, is to look at the difference in the 3 questions asked by those 2 systems. So the 3 main questions that the retributive system asks, and retributive is like the standard way that most justice or judicial systems work, are what laws were broken, who did it, and how should they be punished. Restorative justice, on the other hand, asks what happened, who was affected, and how, and what can be done to make things right. So I'd love to hear from you all, like, what are some of the things that you notice that are different between those 2 sets of questions?
One is like a feedback loop. The restorative, like a feedback loop, and the retributive is like a once back and forth, or even like a one-way street. It's not really. There's no chance to feedback, really.
Yeah, totally. And that's why we have the image of the finger pointing, right? Because it's like adversarial. One group is deciding for the other, one party for the other party, and there isn't dialogue, versus what you're describing with feedback with restorative justice. There's more of a conversation. Anything else that you notice? That's the word of things.
Yeah, kind of like adding to that, probably like a bias, or like not a bias, but it's how can I say, what laws were broken? It's not it's relative, if that makes sense. What happened is like, there's no question what happened, like everyone can agree on that statement, but what laws were broken, that can vary by jurisdiction, like, for example. So it's like biased is probably also not the right word, but yeah, biased way of looking at it, I guess.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so when we ask that question, what happened, it actually allows for multiple perspectives to describe the incident, versus taking a scenario and immediately trying to apply a law or a rule to it, which then narrows what we actually understand happened.
Exactly.
I think one big powerful thing too is, in this crypto blockchain world, we're talking about pushing the power and decisions down, so it's more consensus level than hierarchical. And so Like what laws were broken? Again, it's like, well, who defines the laws based on, and they're putting one law for everybody. Whereas like what happened, it's like, well, the two people get to decide what happened, and they get to choose how they want to move forward with it versus like some top-down approach.
Yeah, totally. Right. There's an empowerment of voices versus like, instead of this authority deciding and determining this is how things will be, there's this more collaborative, open platform opportunity for people to have agency, to have, to be able to use their own wisdom and experience to address the hurt or the harm.
Yeah.
Another way to understand restorative justice that I think is really important for the application we're talking about today is as a tool for conflict transformation. And this comes from John Paul Lederach, who's known as an international peace builder. And it basically moves away from the term conflict resolution, which sees conflict as a problem that's going to require an outside mediator to come in, look at the problem, and move the parties in conflict towards a prescribed outcome or solution, usually based on the mediator's understanding. Conflict transformation, on the other hand, says that conflict is actually this opportunity that when the parties come together to address the conflict, if they do it with a certain attitude and certain tools, it actually becomes an opportunity for growth and new understanding and transformation of not just the issue itself, but also the parties involved. And that it actually relies on the wisdom of the people in conflict to determine the solutions. So instead of it being this problem, it's going to get kind of like packaged up and go away forever. Conflict becomes this living natural phenomenon, like the unfolding of this fern, the koru in the Maori language, that is dynamic and actually relies not on an outside entity, a third party or an authority figure to create a solution for, but those people who are affected actually being able to identify where they want to go and how they're going to get there. Restorative justice has some really strong roots in New Zealand, which is why I use the image of the fern, the koru. So who and how does restorative justice work? Now I'm going to shift into what it will look like in the workplace. So it brings together people who have been hurt, the people who are taking responsibility for causing the hurt or harm. And then it can also bring in other parts of the community. So support people, colleagues and supervisors, mentors and coaches can all be part of this collaborative process. Just to give you a perspective, in the criminal justice or criminal legal system, that looks like victims and offenders, family members, court representatives, police, and other support services. And the purpose is to hold a collaborative, inclusive process to address harms and needs. So that's why I was asking those questions earlier about what did you need? Because those who have caused the harm or been harmed have a voice to say, like, this is what I need to address this situation to reach some sort of resolution and move on. It relies on a sense of empathy. So this is a humanizing process. And it also builds agreements for repair. So central to this is the idea of repairing relationships and also getting closure. And one more piece here, some of the key concepts, and this is like a little abstract to talk about it this way, but I think it's just important again for the understanding the humanizing element. So first at the top, you see intent versus impact, right? So like, if I say something really offensive to Nick on this call, but I didn't really mean to, and it wasn't my intent, in a restorative process, we can identify how my words impacted Nic, and I can take responsibility for that, even if it wasn't my intent to do so. So separating intent versus impact. Separating person from behavior. So we have a human tendency once harm happens to just say like, oh, well, that person must be like that. They must be this kind of person. And in a restorative approach, we can actually separate and say, well, their behavior came from a need that they were trying to meet. And that doesn't necessarily mean I have to categorize or label that person as bad and wrong. We can actually address the behavior without changing our whole understanding of the person. And the third part, holding complexity for multiple truths. So in the United States and probably around the world today, there's this polarizing, right? Like you are on this side or that side. And it's really hard to get people to move into gray spaces where we can actually be flexible and move between different perspectives and opinions. And a restorative process allows for that because it can allow for multiple truths. When we get off this call, I could have an understanding of exactly what happened here, and Nic could have his understanding, and they could be different. And it doesn't mean that I'm more right than Nic. So in a restorative process, we can actually hear those different perspectives and allow for those to coexist, which is a really important element for innovation. So I have 2 more slides for innovation, and then I'll open it up to hear your thoughts, just to know, so you know where we're going. Let me move this out of the way.
Really like the intent versus impact also allows for multiple truths, you know, because it's like, well, it's part of like active listening. It's like, hey, this is the message that was sent, but like, how was it received? You know, and then that way you can see like, well, there's 2 truths really here. There's already 2 truths. It's not one objective truth. And like, this is the only way it is.
Yeah, I think it's where we've gotten so stuck these days is that this sort of like being compelled, like we have to only narrow ourselves down to 2, to black and white. Is simply not the reality. Like Nic shared you that like there was a breakout session about natural ecosystems, right? And we think about the diversity in the natural world. There's no movement towards like, let's simplify until we're on 2 different sources, 2 different ways of evolving. There's always many complex ways of opening and unfolding that create the diversity of the natural world, which is actually what we need in the human world as well. I see a hand up. Would you like to ask a question or share something?
Ushio?
Hi. Nic, I think I met you before.
Yes, we have.
Cool. Yeah, the gray area, I think, is what I prefer to call the sort of 2 truths. And something is fundamentally, I'm a designer, changing your mind. It's a good thing. Huh?
Yeah, it's growth. Yeah.
The best advertising, I've always followed advertising campaigns. I hate them, but love them. IKEA, you know, big national world company. And I remember driving into a car park and seeing this banner advertising. It's good to change your mind. And I thought, what is this? What is this message? And of course, with IKEA, they're saying, look, you can buy something. If you get it home, you don't like it, you can bring it back and change it. But it triggered off a whole sort of train of thought with me that, and people are scared to change their minds. I don't know whether this contributes to, I've joined your conversation late. I've just been with crypto regulations. I think yours is more interesting. Possibly more relevant as well. Sorry, I'll let you carry on.
No problem. Yeah, thanks. Thanks so much for adding that in. Yeah, it's okay to change. Yeah, that's change your mind. That's part of one of the pieces that you missed was I was talking about conflict transformation, which basically rests on the idea that if I come into a process to address conflict or disagreement with a sense of safety to listen and to be challenged and to be uncomfortable, to be vulnerable, to use a word that Nic used earlier, that actually opens up the space for every person to do the same, to listen, right? Instead of like sinking in and saying, my way is the only way and the right way, a facilitated conflict transformation process says like, hey, we're gonna listen first. Every person gets a chance to speak, and there's actually no chance for judgment or competition or analysis of anyone else's experience. So every person's experience can be named, and then through consensus, we can brainstorm collaborative agreements for moving forward. And it's not a zero-sum game, so it doesn't mean that one person wins and one person loses, that there's ways that we can actually communicate to create mutually agreeable and respectful outcomes after conflict. And that doesn't happen unless there's the capacity for our minds to be changed, right? If minds weren't changed, this whole Cardano and crypto world wouldn't even exist. So thank goodness. We're built to evolve, right? And thanks, Dan. Oh, yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, just so I can catch up with, I think at the previous chat with them, Nic, this is the sort of verbal side of things, but you know, integrating this into software, algorithms and all of that, you know, Facebook needs it, whatever. You know, I think I've seen Nic hanging out in the Catalyst sort of tech area. And I'm fascinated because I love AI. It's only because I'm not frightened by it. You know, I play games with the YouTube algorithm. You know, the poor algorithm gets upset when I start changing from sort of politics to music. You know, the thing goes haywire. It's very good. It catches up with me, but I'm always ahead of the algorithm. Well, how many people are able to do that? But presumably, you know, this research goes back to Freud sort of thing, but getting this into the political domain, you know, they want answers, you know, they want to regulate, and they haven't a clue, but you lot have a clue, and that's where I get frustrated. So what is your viewpoint on that, may I ask?
Specifically on bringing this into like a political arena, is that the question?
No, from a tech implementation, you know, I mean, a good developer, code writer could put all of these aspects into machine learning, and they do, but they do it in their own way. But if it's done by professional people and say, no, we won't have that, we're not allowed to do that with your algorithm.
I think, and yeah, Kathleen, you know, share your own viewpoint too, but I think there's definitely some preventative stuff, like getting the language out there and, you know, different things like that could help us make sure we're tuned into our environment, we're separating people from behavior, intents and impacts and things like that. And there's a lot of like circling type games and tools and resources, you know, like in your book, I think preventatively that could, you know, maybe be involved in tech, but sometimes when you really do need more of a mediation, that really right now, I think takes a human being to be able to socially intuit, you know, like, are people really expressing what they feel or not? And
Yeah.
I don't think I would bring that into the technology realm. So there's maybe like a preventative.
Okay, no, well, that's
mechanism.
fair comment, fair comment. I respect it. I mean, you've answered my question. But you know, at some stage, I feel it could be done. But you know, then you're going to say, well, you've got to have a regulatory body to oversee it, and then it all goes out the window because the human contact, which is what you're saying, is then sort of overridden. So yeah, well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for helping me out on that too, Nic.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just share a few more specific links to innovation and then open it up for more discussion. So, you know, I shared previously with Nic that there's this study done by Google in 2016 that asked what makes the most successful teams of people, like in any workplace. But they looked specifically at Google. They studied 200 teams internally. They looked at all the previous research about what makes teams successful at work. And they basically narrowed it down through all that research to 2 behavioral norms. So ways that people behave with each other. And those 2 norms were that 1, there's a space for turn taking. So people are able to voice their ideas without being judged or interrupted or spoken over. So space for turn taking. And 2, social intuiting, what Nic just shared. So people working as a team are able to look at each other and have a sense of how they're doing, how they're feeling, what's actually going on non-verbally, just by being interactive with each other. And that those 2 norms were actually the most critical and essential for psychological safety, which is that ability to feel safe in a group, to participate fully. So when we think about this in innovation, I just have 3 points to share. One is restorative approaches raise the collective intelligence of a group through intentional spaces for equal voice, right? So we all have the experience of what it's like to be in a team at a boardroom table, and there's one person who dominates, right? Or maybe 2 people that have the loudest voices in the room. And those loudest voices don't always necessarily have all the answers. So we need processes that we can use to actually create safety for every person to be heard. And that creates a more inclusive environment. So this relates to some of Nic's work with archetypes, right? There's certain archetypes or personality types who will always put their ideas out first, right? They're quick, they're maybe more verbal, more vocal, and yet they need to have a moment in an intentional way that they're asked to pause and listen to the other ideas that could be very different and very diverse, but the outcome of that will be the intelligence of the entire group is elevated. The second one, improving morale, a sense of community and belonging. So this is that idea of like, we want to keep people together. We want, even if I have an idea to share that's super different than Nic's, it's important that I feel enough safety and I feel brave enough to voice the idea, right? So we want to keep diversity of expertise and perspectives in the room. Also, if there's disagreement, if I voice something that's like, my idea is super different than Nic's, and that causes harm between me and Nic, we need processes to address that harm first so that we don't get stuck in grudges, right? Like if you've been part of any group, any workplace, you know what happens when someone gets stuck. I was hurt by Nic in 2016, and I'm going to hold on to that for forever and be bitter. And it's going to affect all of our ability to work well together, right? Like I've facilitated processes for people who say, like, we started working together 20 years ago, and I'm still not over. I still haven't recovered from the incident that happened 20 years ago between us. So imagine the inertia that's created. We get stuck in that relational stalemate, which affects our ability to actually innovate. Also, we all know what happens when people are complaining, right? Like all the energy, if I'm upset about how I was treated in a certain setting and I start complaining about it, all the energy gets sucked into that complaining. So we need to have ways to talk about hurt and harm that creates closure and moves on so that we can spend our time in more valuable ways. My third point, and this is really important, I think, just for the paradigm change that you all are part of, right? You want congruence or alignment across your efforts. So if you're changing the paradigm of currency, of hierarchy, of authority by decentralizing, you also want that paradigm to show up congruently across how you do everything, how you do your internal governance. So how can you build capacity for individuals to be able to address their own disagreements without having to call an administrator or a human resources officer and say, help, can you solve our problem? Right? This shifts the ownership and the agency to the people who have the issue. Leave behind the conventional way of dealing with problems and instead empower yourselves with the skills and tools to address them yourselves, to transform the conflict, to get through it so that you can get back into right relationship and co-create solutions and ideas together based on what your actual mission or objective is. And part of that is there's capacity building. So when we learn to relate to each other and communicate differently, where we say like, hey, we have the ability to be uncomfortable together and come up with agreements for what we need to be in a healthy relationship, that's actually practice for all the other ways that we need to be in a team with a project, or even, with our families, with other circles of people that we're part of. The skills of restorative approaches build our ability to be more human with each other and to resolve differences in all of those other roles that we're in. So in that sense, when we move from conflict, like someone help us put a solution on this conflict, to I have the ability to actually name the outcome that I need and collaborate with you on that, I think that process actually generates the skills needed to innovate and think outside the box and imagine possibilities that haven't been thought of or unforeseen until now. So I will stop that share and just want to open it up to hear your questions, your reflections, anything that you'd like to share or hear more about.
I have a question. Great presentation, thanks. And I was just thinking about, yeah, great, let's do this with the Cardano community. But then there's so little conflict in the Cardano community. And so, yeah, I was trying to think about how, like, maybe it would be a good idea to do it with another blockchain, because there's a lot of, I wouldn't call it hate, but distrust coming from other protocols regarding Cardano. And maybe it would be a good idea to facilitate some kind of restorative environment innovation workshop with people from Cardano and some quote unquote adversarial protocol.
Yeah, I think one of the, well, I think, you know, we just launched smart contracts and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, the funds are doubling in size now. I think we're starting to see that conflict coming in, to be honest. And I think those building blocks need to be built before you have the big conflicts, I think, that, you know, we're seeing. But what I do see within Cardano is, because it's a very specialized community, it's like a very specific technology, it's the language is different and things like that. I do think we see there's a lot of people who have ideas that aren't maybe feeling safe enough to speak up. And so we call them lurkers. And we kind of assume that, like, oh, well, they'll just figure it out the way I did, hang around 6 months, learn how to read GitHub or Discord, but they're not, you know. And I'm talking to these people and they're like, I listen, you know, like when you listen to Charles on his AMA, you get this like beautiful world, this whole revolution's being built, you know, like, yes, I want to be a part of it. And then you kind of like end up in Catalyst and you're like, wow, I'm really overwhelmed. And I have some ideas, but I have no idea how to like put anything into play, nor do I have the time to learn another, you know, Discord and multiple Telegram channels. So I think a lot of opportunity is being missed. And so my idea was to build like a seed project right now, ideally in this Fund 7, where we build a train the trainers approach. You know, I'm not sure exact numbers wise, Kathleen, maybe you can speak to it, but you know, maybe there's a dozen or, you know, 20 something people where we train that can also kind of like help train people so that when people do have like conflict, because I already see it's happening, it's already coming in the Telegram channels, and sometimes even just this last town hall last week, you know, there was like some more like abruptness, rudeness, and like, well, wait a minute, like, why is there an unmet need there? You know, instead of just saying like, hey, simmer down, you know, we could be like, hey, what's going on? Like, why don't you feel heard? And then that, you know, understanding that one person's might understand a whole group of individuals of why they don't feel heard, I guess, or why they're criticizing the, you know, Cardano and things.
Have you been around in April already?
I've been around, no, it's been, I think I'm on 4 or 5 months now. So okay. I've just,
so left. There was this NFT DAO conflict. That was the first and only conflict I had so far in the Catalyst community. I was part of this NFT DAO, and actually Stephen, Tyler, and I ended up leaving because of huge arguments with the founding team, which Tyler actually was a part of, and it was not nice. And we ended up on Rick McCracken's Digital Fortress live show discussing about it, and it was not pretty. Might have gone differently if we knew about this, and so yeah, it's probably a good idea. Have you put in a proposal in Fund 7 already for this?
Right now, no, where I'm putting in all my placeholders where I'm building things out, but yeah, I am, like, it will be in there. I think it's going to be in the MISC challenge for the restorative part for right now, but
why not the community challenge?
Could be community hubs also, but
would there scale up community and community events?
Yeah, sorry. Sorry, Dan.
No, good. I just wanted to mention, I think some of those KPIs would be difficult to meet. So we're kind of like more MISC when you actually look at like, what can we audit and what can we like verify and meet KPIs, because community hubs is a lot more about growth. And this is slightly different. So I think we might fit in that MISC category. a little bit
I mean, community events is the challenge brief reads, how can we increase meaningful participation among the community in the next 6 months? I think it fits very well. And
Dan, how many community advisors are there? There's 300, aren't there?
no more.
More?
Much more, yeah.
I mean, you know, they could all attend a school run by Nic and Kathleen. I don't know. I mean,
yeah, they should.
They should
attend the school.
Thank you. I mean, I don't see how you fit into the proposal scheme, Nic. I mean, you need to be in the proposal thing. I think Dan and I can confirm that. But I would say you have no chance because you're not in a tech team, which is why I referred earlier to you have to integrate this somehow. I mean, you do realize that Catalyst is going to be completely decentralized and open to complete control by the decentralized blockchain of Cardano. I'm not sure, Dan can probably explain that better. But so you've got to integrate with that somehow. And I don't, you know, that's why I raised the question about AI and machine learning and all of that. It's you know, it's already in place, I can tell you that. It's not being monitored. And, you know, you say the human element. Yeah, you know, if there are 3,000 community advisors, your team could be, your funding team could be 10 humans. Well, that's valuable. You know, the fact that there is an allowance for humans in the system, I think is what I'm really saying. You know,
right. Well, it's just like community advisors, right? I mean, how is community advisors involved in the tech? Like it's a bunch of education videos. I'm not worried about, I guess, integrating in the tech. It's just, you know, opening up a ticket. I do think, unfortunately, I would love to see a little bit more of the preventative stuff. So I'd love to do like a train the trainer approach where then they can host almost like weekly town halls. Town halls got funding, you know, where it is just like a general meeting of like how this language can be incorporated in doing the preventative circling kind of games and resources that could be done more regularly. And then always have the like, okay, go to this, like if you have a problem, like the one Dan just mentioned, like, you know, I go here, like, oh, there's a big problem, this is blowing up. We go here and then we ask for mediation. And then as people go through that mediation, if they haven't already, you know, been involved in understanding what a restorative environments means, they get to experience it firsthand. And then ideally they're like, wow, we need to do so much more preventative stuff at our company.
I like this restorative environment. That's a great title. I mean, you should be on the Catalyst circle, you know, the inner circle of Catalyst. It's an essential role that someone needs to represent the human factor on the Catalyst circle. I mean, I would back a proposal for that and say, you know, and you know, then you're in for 3 months. The present sort of system, you're on the Catalyst circle for 3 months, and you know, if you do a good job, you get voted in for another 3 months. No one has a clue how that's going to work out, but you know, it's a good plan. But you should definitely be on the board. Is what I would say if I was looking at it from a company perspective.
Yeah, well, I'll look at, that's a good idea. Thank you, Yoshi. I'll look at the swarm and the after town hall to see how they worded that, because those got funding to, I think include that in the proposal.
Sounds very
That sounds like a very smart thing to do, because they have a lot of categories, and I feel like the idea is to accommodate all aspects. And yeah, maybe this is something that's been overlooked.
It should be the general ADA holder that represents this in some sense. But I guess as soon as there's new positions needed, can make those.
Yeah, more specific, maybe, like rather than see, general ADA holder may not represent, because they may not have the ideas, you know, like how they were speaking before, they may not have all of this structure in place already for, you know, conflict transformation and stuff.
I don't know what they have in place and what they're really doing, to be honest. Like each of the capitalist circles. It's like
have you seen my proposal? My hippie proposal?
No.
I would like you to join my proposal, Nick.
Yeah, send it. Put a link in the chat.
But I guess
God, I don't know what the link is. Just look up. I think it's called Realization of Deep Insights. Realization of Deep Insights. Look up that on the idea scale, and I hope you like it. It's completely non-tech.
Okay.
Right up your street. But it's not a joke. It's not a joke. It's a sort of joke, but but I would say you're the type of person I want to team up with.
Same, yeah.
And I'm not after funding. You know, that's the fundamental approach. But I'm quite happy to allow funding to come in if it's going to go to a proper body like yourself. I think you're already involved in some other proposals, so you know, I'm not trying to muscle it. Exactly. But do have a look at mine. You might have a good laugh.
Yeah.
But it's not a joke. Okay.
And I do have to start getting going a little bit, but I know James has your question. You've had a hand up for a bit, so I want to let you speak. I
just wanted to first and foremost say hi to everybody. Some very unique conversation I had. I've been in and out because I've been on the phone, so I didn't get the opportunity to fully listen to everyone speak and the full conversation that was going on. But I'm with a team that is having a slight problem. The first thing, one of my main reasons is I got in here, you said something about environment, your environmentalist and everything like that. And our project is not necessarily full on the environmental form. We started about 6 to 7 years ago, right around the time Mr. Hawkinson put out the white paper. And basically we're doing a project for Africa, for the entirety of Africa. And the name of our project is called SHIELD, S-H-I-E-L-D. It means social awareness, healthcare, identity, education, legal document, and data research. If you was to fully take exactly what the blockchain is meant for, you can do something on a larger social scale. You know, taking the whole cryptocurrency part of it, not cryptocurrency, just blockchain itself, the key fundamental and the engine behind the crypto. The blockchain itself can take any third world nation within less than 3 years and transform it to compete with second to third world countries. And it can be used in just about everywhere. So
James, can I just pause you 1 second? Is this do you have a question revolving around the restorative justice or restorative environments, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. As far as the restorative thing that you're doing, I didn't get like a timeline on it, and it's like we are trying to look for more projects to integrate with and everything. So being I didn't get a timeline, anything. I'm loving what you're doing, and especially with the environment. Africa, we have a lot of environment. And so I just wanted to know exactly, since I've been in and out, exactly what this is headed towards.
Well, yeah, just to recap a little bit, I think real briefly is we're going to put a fund in for Fund 7. I'm actually going to be part of 3 different projects, but this one is more on the restorative environment side that's going to help us drive our innovation. And I want to have the two things. I mean, I'd like to do a train the trainer approach and then ask for funds, just like Town Hall does, to basically run some consecutive meetings to, I think, do restorative teaching tools to help people understand the language and do some of the preventative, games and resources that help us drive innovation. But then also have those be facilitators who then, can mediate stuff, or at least reach out to the people who need to be brought in order to mediate something. Should something like Dan talked about earlier, where there's like a team, they're working on something, maybe they got a ton of money, right? All the money is getting bigger now. They have tons of money and now there's a big disagreement and the whole team wants to split. Like, what's going to happen? So then we have at least a road map to say, like, hey, if you're having problems with the team or things aren't working out or there's some big conflict, come in here and we can, walk you down this restorative mediation path if needed. And then really work on how do we do this preventatively to avoid the big explosive conflict.
That's very good, Nick. I like that. You said that spot on. That should be the quote from I've only been here for 20 minutes. But no, you did that very well, mate. Very well. That's exactly the right approach.
Absolutely.
And I want to get it right. Restorative. What is the title? Restorative
Environments, I think, right now.
Restorative environment. It's very good. Very good. I like it.
And yeah, I'll let Kathleen end because I think she needs to go also. And then people can feel free to stay around and chat. I need to go, but
no, I'm going.
You just posted her website if you want to check out more about this restorative environments and even.
Oh, you've got a website. Is that?
Yeah, this KathleenMcGooey.com is hers.
Oh, I'm making a. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, everybody. And I appreciate the questions. And also, Nick, thanks for helping to paint.
Present very well, Kathleen. Very well presented. I'm sorry I missed the first bit. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'd be happy to answer any questions and come back and share more. I just wanted to touch on the fact that Nick really pointed out the preventative piece. So just to clarify, the idea is that there needs to be relationship building around the concepts of respect and responsibility in order to set the stage for when conflict happens, people have an understanding of why they should even address it in a new and different way. Most of us haven't had a lot of tools in place where we actually sit down and get real and honest with each other to move through conflict, right? People usually avoid it or they fight. So we have to be doing the groundwork, which is what Nick was saying. The preventative piece is really about saying, okay, these are our values that define how we are with each other. We're going to be respectful in these ways. We're going to take responsibility for our words and actions so that when we do hurt each other intentionally or unintentionally, those values are in place that help say, okay, this is now how we're going to come together and actually listen to each other, repair those relationships, and create agreements moving forward. So it's a whole arc. The more that we do preventatively, the more prepared we are to actually address the uncomfortable difference of opinions or hurt and harm that happens. So thanks so much again for
you've been a wonderful mother, Kathleen. Wonderful mother. I'm 66 years old. I'm too old. But, what a wonderful mother you would be. Have you got any children?